Joining me now for more on President Trump's ceasefire announcement is Democratic House Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Leader Jeffries, your reaction to what we know about this ceasefire tonight?
Well, a 2-week ceasefire is insufficient. We need a permanent end to Donald Trump's reckless war of choice, which is why House Democrats have demanded that Speaker Mike Johnson immediately reconvene the House back into session so we can move a war powers resolution that will end this conflict permanently.
That seems unlikely to happen. What do you actually think is going to happen in this 2-week period? What do you need to, assuming that doesn't happen, what do you need to see happen or want to see happen in this 2-week period?
Assuming it doesn't happen this week, we go back into session next week and we will present a war powers resolution as soon as it becomes available to us to do so as a matter of privilege on the House floor. All we need are a handful of Republicans to join us. The American people strongly oppose this reckless war of choice and know that we should not be spending billions of dollars to drop bombs in Iran while Republicans and Donald Trump are unwilling to spend a dime to actually make life more affordable for the American people, including but not limited to by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. It's unbelievable in terms of the priorities, and yet we've seen this president's behavior unhinged, unpresidential, unconscionable, including the messages that he's communicated to the American people over the last few days.
Is there a scenario where the Iranian regime gains control? I mean, they have control now of the Strait of Hormuz. According to this ceasefire, if it holds, it seems like for this 2 weeks, they will have control of it as well, and very well possibly beyond that. If Iran gains full control over passage through the Strait of Hormuz, is that an acceptable outcome to you?
Well, it would be an extraordinary outcome, but not surprising given the fact that what we've seen from Donald Trump is that he's plunged America into this war that now involves more than a dozen countries without any plan, any objective, and any exit strategy in terms of how actually this conflict improves the national security of the American people. What we do know is that as a result of Donald Trump's reckless war of choice, life has become more dangerous for the American people and life has become more expensive as a result of gas prices skyrocketing across the country, further exacerbating an affordability crisis that are crushing everyday Americans, middle-class Americans, and working-class Americans throughout the land.
Do you think the President of the United States looks weak for having now 5 deadlines that he has made? This last one saying he would kill off the entire, that he would kill Iran's entire civilization, and then not following through on that?
I think the president has consistently weakened America's standing throughout the world as the leader of the free world. In fact, he often confuses friend from foe. We've seen him do this as it relates to how he's engaged with Ukraine and continuing to play footsie with Vladimir Putin and Russia, who are sworn enemies of the United States of America. He never treats them in that fashion. And in terms of the outcome of the situation, which has already been very costly and deadly, more than a dozen brave, patriotic Americans have lost their lives, men and women in uniform, and hundreds have been seriously injured. And the question is, to what end?
Leader Jeffries, I appreciate your time. Thank you.